Thailand, Thailand ranks 140 out of 180 on the Press Freedom Index. The euphemistically named National Council for Peace and Order, the military junta set up by General Pailuth Chan-o-cha after seizing power in a coup d'etat in 2014, was disbanded in 2019. This ubiquitous and all-powerful junta had constantly hounded the more outspoken journalists, summoning them for questioning and detaining them arbitrarily, driving at least 10 of them to flee from the country. But the long-promised elections held in March of 2019 made no difference to the total control wielded by the elites surrounding General Prayuth, who is now the Prime Minister, Defense Minister, and Chief of the Royal Thai Police. Any criticism of the government is liable to lead to harsh reprisals facilitated by draconian legislation and a justice system that follows orders. A cybersecurity law adopted in February of 2019 gave the executive branch even more powers and poses an additional threat to online information. In December of 2019, for example, a journalist was sentenced to 2 years in prison because she had tweeted about the appalling conditions of migrant workers. The threat of a lèse-majesté charge carrying a possible 15-year jail sentence continues to be used as a weapon of mass deterrence against dissident journalists and bloggers. The authorities, meanwhile, behave in a very indulgent manner towards certain regimes. Cambodian, Chinese, and Vietnamese operatives have been allowed to come and arrest dissident exile journalists or bloggers from their country in order to repatriate them and then jail them. I will now be reading to you an excerpt from the Wikipedia page on censorship across the world. This one is going to be censorship in Thailand. Unfortunately, it is egregious in so many ways that I had to end up getting a more broad article to touch points on everything that I wanted to. So, here we go. Censorship in Thailand involves the strict control of political news under successive governments, including by harassment and manipulation. Freedom of speech was guaranteed in 1997, and those guarantees continue in 2007. Mechanisms for censorship have included strict lèse-majesté laws, direct government and military control over broadcast media, and the use of economic and political pressure. Criticism of the king is banned by the constitution, although most lèse-majesté cases have been directed at foreigners or at Thai opponents of political, social, and commercial leaders. Thai ranked 59 out of 167 countries in 2004, and that fell down to 107 in 2007 and is now fallen to 140 out of 180 in 2019 when the Uncensored library was published. As far as the guarantees of freedom of expression and press, a person shall enjoy the liberty of communication by any means. Censorship, detention, or disclosure of communication between persons, including any other act disclosing a statement and communication between persons, shall not be made except by virtue of the provisions of a law specifically enacted for the security of the state. So effectively, unlike some Western democracies, there are exceptions written into the Constitution that will allow the government to make laws to subvert the Constitution. One of the first examples is print media. It occurred with the advent of the first printing press in the country, and the first law book was banned. Thailand's first law book was banned, and all copies of the original manuscript were ordered destroyed. Under the 1941 Printing and Advisement Act, the Royal Thai Police Special Branch had the authority to issue warnings to publications for violations such as disturbing the peace, interfering with public safety, or offending public morals. According to a study at the Political Science Library in Thammasat University from 1850 to 1999, 157 books and periodicals were officially banned by the publication in the Royal Gazette, including many books among the 100 books every Thai should read. Many titles reflect their era of anti-communist fervor and were published both in Thailand and abroad in Thai, Chinese, Vietnamese, Korean, Bosha, English, German, French, and Spanish. Periodicals have also been censored. The press has been censored from publishing news damaging to the monarchy. Just last year, at least on 3 different occasions, when the random normal Thai citizens were jailed for taking what was considered unflattering pictures of the king when he was walking around in public in a crop top, shorty shorts, walking a poodle. And people were jailed for taking pictures of him and making fun of him. Thailand has also repeatedly engaged in selective filtering in social media, in political and internet tool areas, with no evidence of filtering was found in the conflict security area by the OpenNet initiative in 2011. Thailand is officially, under Reporters Without Borders, the progenitors of the Uncensored Library, countries under surveillance in 2011. It was listed as partly free as in 2013, but that has since deteriorated. Television broadcasts, scenes with clothes showing cleavage, a man's bare chest, weapons pointed at people, consumption of alcohol, and etc. If a Thai show is broadcasted overseas, the blurs will most likely be omitted, but within the countries, scenes that have those things are blurred. Radio in Thailand must be government licensed and is traditionally operated primarily by government and the military, and films have notoriously been under rebuke by their Thailand's censorship board. They actually initially banned the film Schindler's List because of a nude scene. However, after a fervor in the press, the board reversed the decision. Of the 282 films submitted in review in 2003, 4 were banned, 3 South Korean, 1 U.S. Officers at the censorship board cite sex and nudity as the main reasons for banning the film. Examples of this are The King and I, The Da Vinci Code, Syndromes in a Century, Operation Mekong, and numerous other Thai films. Although freedom of speech was guaranteed in the 1997 Constitution, it was limited by several laws. The king may not be spoken ill of, and La Message laws are enforced. In 1986, Deputy Interior Minister Varia Meskapong was convicted, imprisoned, and banned from politics for a campaign speech in which he noted that if he was born the crown prince, he would be drinking whiskey instead of standing here getting pains in my knees. The judgment of the Thai courts may not be criticized, and after a controversial ruling in July of 2006 in which a criminal court jailed 3 election commissioners, the court worked with the police to identify 16 individuals who were captured on TV's news footage criticizing the judgment. The court later found all the individuals guilty and gave them jail terms to 4 of them. The maximum jail sentence for the offense was 7 years. Furthermore, defamation laws are frequently used to silence dissidents during the Thaksin administration, often by the Prime Minister himself. This led to a backlog in the courts in defamation suits and countersuits. Self-censorship also has a long tradition in Thailand. It has resorted mostly from fear of being charged with a violation of lèse-majesté statutes. Channel 3 Thailand published a very short statement saying that the drama series Nuamak which depicted corrupt politicians, a fictitious prime minister, and his crooked deputies, was scheduled to air on Friday, January 2013, and was deemed inappropriate, and that another drama series would be aired instead. Libel suits have also been used to silence government critics. Notable libel suits were submitted to the by the Shin Corporation against the Secretary General of the Campaign for Popular Media Reform, and she effectively exposed that the Shin Corporation was a vessel for corruption. At the end of the day, Thailand is a beautiful place with a deep, rich culture that, unfortunately, its leaders cannot and will not put the power in the hands of the people, and will continue to censor and oppress their people until their people eventually eat them. And we will see if that happens sooner or if it happens later.
poggers.